Okay, so hello and thank you for joining us from all over the world today as we celebrate International Day for Universal Access to Information with UNESCO. My name is Afari Darfour and I'm a graduate researcher with the University of Alberta. And the title of my presentation today is Privacy and AI-Driven Bionic Limbs. And I'll be primarily talking about the intersectionalities between these two interdisciplinaries or these two domains and exploring the overall theme of the risks and opportunities inherent within AI technologies for disabling disabilities. Now, due to various, incidents like workplace incidents or natural disasters, there are millions of people all over the world living with limb loss. Particularly in the United States, there are about 2 million limb amputees and about 4.6 million people across Europe living with limb loss. And out of these millions of people, there are about 1.7 million amputees in the United States alone that have opted to use some kind of bionic limb or prosthetic device to replicate the functionalities of their lost biological limb. So they're opting to use some kind of prosthetic device to help them carry out their daily activities, essentially. But today, this day and age, thanks to the power of artificial intelligence, bionic limbs have evolved from being just, mechanical devices. They have evolved into becoming dynamic learning systems that, collect user data and then analyze this user data in order to adapt these devices to the user's movement patterns and preferences. And this has allowed the millions of amputees who have chosen to use prosthetic devices to move around more naturally and to carry out their daily activities of living, like walking, running, picking up food to eat, and etc. How exactly do these, prosthetic devices adapt to users' unique movement patterns, adapt to users' unique preferences? And so AI-driven bionic limbs are equipped with various sensors, and these sensors collect certain data from the users. And with the help of certain machine learning models and algorithms, the device is able to learn the user's movement patterns and then therefore adapt the device, the bionic limb, to the user's unique movement patterns and preferences. And so bionic limbs are equipped with sensors like accelerometers that measure the change in velocity over time. And so essentially measuring the user's movement. They're also equipped with gyroscopes that measure the direction of movement and electromyographic sensors that capture muscle activities from the user's residual limb, allowing the bionic limb to interpret these signals and respond accordingly. And so there have been tremendous breakthrough within this domain. However, given that, given the vast collection of sensor data and the demonstrated privacy risks associated with the use of these sensors when they're used in other domains like smartphones and smartwatches, and smartphones and smartwatches is very essential to us because just like bionic limbs, they're also being carried around for, or even attached to the body for extended periods of time. Given that, the protection of user data from unauthorized access and misuse is very, very critical. And this is particularly important because unlike smartphones and smartwatches, users of bionic limbs cannot opt out of using their bionic limbs. Users of smartphones and smartwatches can easily opt out of using their smartphones or smartwatches because there's relatively little impact when they do so. But for users of bionic limbs, opting out would mean that they do not have access to, essential daily activities of living. Opting out is not a luxury for them because they depend on these devices in order to carry out daily essential acts like picking up food to eat or walking or running. And so the stakes are very high for the millions of users who are using AI-driven bionic limbs. And so let's take for an example, accelerometers, right? The privacy risk of accelerometers when they're used in smartphones and smartwatches have been well documented within the literature. Researchers within this domain have determined with evidence that, accelerometers within smartphones and smartwatches are susceptible to a plethora, to a myriad of privacy risks. And so unauthorized access, so a malicious entity, and this can be an individual or an organization, right, can gain unauthorized access to accelerometer data covertly and use various machine learning techniques and algorithms to analyze this data in order to infer certain private information about the user. So they can infer private information like a user's movements. Are they going up and down the stairs? Are they walking? Are they running? And then they can use this data to also track a user's movements, determine exactly where they are on a road network, or track their movements when they take the train or use the train system, right? Malicious entities can also use this information to infer private information like a user's identity. They can determine exactly who a user is or authenticate a user. And this has been well documented within the literature. So given what we know, and in in the sense that accelerometers have certain inherent privacy risks associated with them, my research at the University of Alberta is looking into exploring to see whether similar vulnerabilities exist in their use in AI-driven bionic limbs, because we've already established that bionic limbs are using some of these sensors for their functionalities. So are there similar vulnerabilities that exist within their use in bionic limbs as they exist within their use in smartphones and smartwatches? And so why exactly is privacy research within this domain important? Why is understanding the different privacy implications associated with bionic limbs important? Now, there are serious consequences should there be potential privacy breaches for millions of bionic limb users. For example, insurance companies, without the permission of the user, right, could track a user's movements to determine the activity levels. Now, for example, let's say activity levels are related to certain health risk. If the insurance company determines that person A is less active, so due to that, they are more prone to certain health conditions, they can then decide to, deny them of insurance coverage. Another serious implications could be that hackers could impersonate users and take on the identity and gain access to certain sensitive information that most of us do not want access to, right? They can gain access to healthcare records or financial records. And there's so many people all over the world who do not want unauthorized access to their bank statements or their medical records. Another example of a privacy breach could be that criminals could monitor users of bionic limbs activities and determine if they're far away from their homes, right? They can monitor their locations and determine if they're far away from their homes so that they can go back and commit certain criminal activities like robberies. And so there are serious consequences for bionic limb usage, or serious impacts if we do not, put privacy, the notion of privacy at the forefront of the development and deployments of these bionic limbs. And so what I want us to take away from my presentation today is that given the extensive collection of user data through these sensors, there are significant privacy concerns. And the reason why these privacy concerns are significant is because there are real-world implications should there be privacy breaches for the millions of people who are using AI-driven bionic limbs. And given that these people cannot easily opt out of not using their bionic limbs, the stakes are very high. And so to developers, manufacturers, policymakers that are watching this presentation, we have an ethical obligation, we have an ethical imperative to protect the privacy of users of AI-driven bionic limbs. And so thank you very much for joining me. And this is the end of my presentation, and have a great day.